Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. If this video gets 1,000,000 likes, I'll read one of these stories while skydiving. That said, our first story of the day is by Ainsless. Your working hours are 9 AM to 6 PM. To clarify a few things, this took place in Europe. I was a salaried employee, 40 hours a week. I left that job about 10 months after the event took place. I didn't get into trouble and nobody tried to fire me. My probation period was over and we have employment laws regarding constructive dismissal, so I knew their hands were tied. About 4 years back, I started a new banking job. All was well, just that the management was pretty strict with timekeeping, which was weird as we were back office. My experience was in a similar field at another bank, and we had flexible schedules and received time in lieu. But rules are rules, so I followed them. I learned my tasks and got to know the wider team. Anyway, about 4 months in, I started to realize my senior manager didn't like me. I'm pretty assertive as a person, and I do know how to stand up for myself. He hated it. I would speak up during the meetings, ask questions, give suggestions, and so on, while the team would stay quiet. The week everything went south, I was working overtime, which was obviously unpaid. On Thursday, I did nearly 2 hours of overtime. On Friday, I thought I'll leave a few minutes early as I was done for the week. My manager was off. I left 10 minutes early. On Monday, I come to work and I got called into a meeting straight away. There were 3 of us in the room, myself, my manager, and my senior manager. Our conversation went as follows. My manager said, "I heard you left work early on Friday." I say, "I did. I left 10 minutes early." My manager says, "Did you ask for permission to leave early?" I say, "It was 10 minutes. You know I did about 4 hours of overtime last week. Why are we having this conversation?" The senior manager says, "Because you left early without asking for permission? As a senior, you should be setting an example for the rest of the team." I say, "Is this a joke?" Senior manager said, "Your working hours are 9 AM to 6 PM, not 9 AM to 5:50 PM. You shouldn't leave early without asking for your manager or my permission first. Is that clear?" I say, "Got it. It's perfectly clear." I listened and started coming into the office at 9 AM and leaving at 6 PM on the dot. At first, they didn't realize what was happening, but the week after the meeting was the last week of the month. And let's say the last week of the month was intense, especially the final day. The reports had to be completed, signed off, and submitted before the month's end. We covered multiple jurisdictions and would deal with Southeast Asia in the morning and the Americas in the evening. Our team was expected to work overtime due to this. Here comes Friday, last day of the month, showtime. I'm at my desk at 9 AM sharp. Most of the team have already been at the office for at least an hour. I, of course, have a cup of coffee from the cafeteria because I was a bit early. My manager looks at me and raises his eyebrow, but he doesn't say anything. Work, work, work. Break time. We had 2 20-minute paid breaks and 1 hour unpaid lunch. I'm the only person to go on my break. Lunchtime, everyone was eating at their desks while I go to meet my friends for lunch. On the second break, I once again leave my workplace and go for a short stroll around. Back to work. About 5:45 PM, I get a call from one of the senior managers in the US. She needs the report amended. There were 4 of us on that call. I'm doing the amendments as we speak and closely monitoring the time. I see it's 2 minutes to 6 PM, 1 minute, 6 PM. Senior Manager 2's rambling about the report. I say, "Apologies, but I have to stop you right here." They say, "Yes?" I say, "It's 6 PM here. My day's over." They say, "Huh?" I say, "As per my management, my working hours are 9 AM to 6 PM, so I must leave now. Have a great weekend and we'll catch up on Monday." I logged off, got my coat, wished everyone a great weekend, and left. It was 6:04 PM. Both my manager and my senior manager were dumbfounded by what had happened. Looking pale and staring at me in disbelief, it was a glorious sight. I wanted to apologize to my senior manager that I wasn't able to leave at 6 PM on the dot, but I thought that would have been way too passive-aggressive, so I just left. I relaxed the rule a bit after a few months, yet I never did more than 30 minutes of overtime. Ironically, once my stakeholders understood that I wouldn't be available for 10+ hours, they started collaborating earlier in the month. I would have most of my reports done and submitted by the last day of the month. Weird, it's like working your actual hours and enforcing that causes people to work within those hours and enforce that. Would you be willing to work like 5+ hours of unpaid overtime a month? Let me know if that would ever fly for you in the comments down below. Our next story is by Tubist61. doesn't work that way here. A few years ago, I was working in a company that was bought out by another company based in the US. Apologies to our friends over on the other side of the Atlantic, but some folks over there don't get that things sometimes work differently in other countries. I've always been a bit of a hothead, and I'm also a big fan of trade unions. Not long after the takeover, there were hints of some issues with the company margins. It seems the original management had hidden some costs in the takeover talks, and there was a shortfall. We all got an email telling us that there was going to be a 10% reduction in salaries to cover this. Now, this didn't go over too well, and I immediately raised the issue with local HR. They told me the decision had come down from the mothership in the US, and they'd all been told that the discussions needed to go via the US. I contacted somebody in the US HR team and said, "You can't do this, it breaks our laws in this country." The response was, "You work for a US company now, our rules apply." I said I was pretty certain that's not how it worked, and if my salary was cut, I would be taking this further and would be discussing this with my union. The person in HR said, "Do what you want. We don't recognize unions. Knock yourself out." I spoke to the union office and was told exactly what to do. They effectively told me what the exact steps for malicious compliance were going to be. Sure enough, my next salary was 10% short. I immediately submitted a format grievance report stating that the company was in breach of contract. No changes to my pay and conditions can be imposed without first renegotiating my contract, and I had to agree to that. The response from HR in the US was, "Let's be kind here," not backed up by an understanding of employment law in this country. I was told that there was nothing I could do about it. They set the rules and that was it. The next stage of malicious compliance then kicked in. I had all their emails, I had my formal grievance, and their response. I sent an email to my line manager, our HR, and HR in the US, stating that I considered that I'd been placed in a situation where the company was in breach of contract, and that I had no option other than to leave the company with immediate effect. I also stated that I classed this as a constructive dismissal and would be filing a case at an employment tribunal for wrongful termination as a result. Roll the clocks on a couple of months and we're in an employment tribunal. The company sent the head of HR across, and I'm waiting there with my support from the union. We walk into the tribunal and the relevant parties are introduced. The head of HR with a smirking face, the local head of HR looking less relaxed, myself and my legal representative, a barrister. As soon as the head of HR heard that I was with a barrister, his smug look evaporated. HR presented their case, and then my barrister set out every single aspect of employment law here to the tribunal. He pointed out every mistake they made, every local law they broke, that the law in the US only applied in the US, not in any other country. He pointed out that I had a long, unblemished record with the company, and that this case had come at a very high personal cost to me, and that finding another job would need more training and could take up to a year. It took less than 10 minutes for them to find against the company. They had to repay the deducted wages to every single employee in this country rather than fight a significant number of similar cases. I was asked if I wanted my job back, but told the tribunal I didn't feel I could work there without being subject to reprisals. I was awarded the maximum basic award and a significant compensatory award of a full year's salary, which let me take a year out to complete some additional technical training at their expense. I also got a glowing reference for my next employer. It cost me nothing for my barrister. That was all funded by the union. Those guys are the royalty of applying malicious compliance. They can apply the law down to its very finest point. And that, my friends, is why unions can be the saving grace for some people. I feel like if it's possible for you to join a union, it's pretty smart for you to go ahead and do so. You never know when an employer might get money grubbing and try to just do something that's against your rights. And having a union to back you up is a very powerful thing sometimes. Our next story is by Ping Pong Rookie. Can't have a doc? Fine then. This is my first post and I experienced my first malicious compliance worth posting last weekend. So anyways, I was up in northern Minnesota for a charity bags tournament. Cornhole for most people. And it was held at the owner's cabin. Now this cabin's worth over $3 million and they have all the gadgets. Flat screens, indoor and outdoor sauna, outdoor patio with fireplace and bar, the whole shebang. Well, in between games, me and my dad went to go look at their dock as they had a pretty neat pontoon and boat that were easily $250,000 plus. When we got to the dock, we noticed that the dock itself had a motor bolted into it and a rudder. We just thought it was quite odd but funny, and then went back to the tourney. We decided to ask some of the guys from our campground that had done the tournament before what it was all about. Apparently, the county wouldn't let the owner put a dock in on their land for some reason. So what did they do? They made their dock into a fully functional boat. So technically it wasn't a dock, but they still parked their boat and pontoon to it. It's like the age-old saying, if my grandma had wheels, she would have been a bike. I don't know how the eyes of the law look at it, but I imagine it has a motor and a rudder. I guess you can't say it's not some kind of aquatic vehicle. Our next story is by Dried Up Squid. Replace the part and don't argue? Okie-dokie. After college, I took a job with an auto insurance company. No names, but some people have a weird fetish with their mascot. My job was to write estimates at body shops and try to save money. I was new on a team, but the manager never spent any time trying to train me or offer guidance, just kind of threw me to the wolves. I was at a shop and there was an area where 2 panels had split at the weld. I saw that they could be repaired and wrote the estimate to reflect that. The body shop wanted to replace the quarter panel, which is the panel that goes from the rear door to the rear bumper. Replacement is extremely expensive and a last resort, but the body shop wanted to cash in. The shop and I got into a heated debate over this, and they kicked me out of the shop for the day. In the following days, the shop called my boss and told them I was being unreasonable and convinced her that they were right. She told me to go out there, pay to replace the panel, and under no circumstances argue. Cue malicious compliance. I go back out, and the body shop manager apologizes to me, showed me that they ended up repairing it like I suggested, and it looked perfect. I took a picture of the car to show it was repaired, and then gave them over $3,000 to replace the panel because my boss said so. There's notes that we make so corporate can follow our train of thought, and I quoted my boss exactly to show why I threw thousands of dollars away. I think the bottom line is this is why it's important when you go to a body shop or a mechanic. If you have the opportunity to, you should probably research it a little bit to try and understand kind of a price range that's reasonable for the work you're looking to get done. Not all places do this obviously, but some places, if they can get away with it, will obviously try to upcharge you on something that isn't necessary. And our final story of the day is by Dalek Max. All tattoos must be covered? Okay. Worked in a nursing home about 10 years ago as a registered nurse on night shift. Had 2 small upper forearm tattoos, text upon hire, but usually wore a jacket to cover them. Was never an issue if I had my jacket off. Always struck up a conversation about my ink and the meaning behind it. One day, the director of nursing announced that all tattoos must be covered at all times as to not offend the residents or visitors. Okay, I worked at night with patients who had some memory issues, so sure, whatever. Don't want to offend anyone. Malicious compliance. Towards the end of my shift, I remembered the new rule. Management would be in soon. I took 2 large pieces of silk tape and covered my tattoos to prove the point. Management, noticing the tape on each forearm, said, "OP, what happened to your arms?" I said, "Oh, well, you guys made that new rule that all tattoos must be covered, so I covered mine." They said, "Oh, I didn't know you had tattoos." I said, "My point exactly. You noticed the tape, yet you never noticed my ink." Soon after, the rule was thrown out. That's why I feel like if you have to have some kind of tattoo rule, it probably stemmed from somebody having an inappropriate tattoo, not so much somebody having a tattoo. If you have to have some kind of cover-up rule, I feel like it should just apply to something that's inappropriate. Something that if you were with your grandma, you wouldn't be like, "Here, look at this." But if someone has the classic heart with the mom sash on it or whatever, I don't see anything wrong with that. And I think as we go forward in time, people get a little bit more lax with the whole, "Wow, you have a tattoo, cover that up." As far as that goes, I think things are just becoming more relaxed in general. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.